This morning I came out to take a look at these apples, see if they were ready, and they look ready. So let's pick one. This is, where's the tag? Williams Pride-Vixen 15.5. This looks very interesting. Pretty much most of the green parts have turned yellow. There's a little bit. That's probably a good thing. It's got some scent to it. These ones here that are really yellow are the ones that were in the light-proof bags, which I really don't like. You know, they don't color up right. They don't seem to taste as good. And you have to uncover them if you want to get any color. Like this one's going to have the best color on the tree for the whole year because it's been in full sun. It never got bagged. Williams Pride-Vixen 1510. It says dark red blossom tips. So let's see what we can find here. This looks pretty red. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's looking quite ripe, I think. Huh. Yeah, we're going to just have to check a bunch of these. Smell them. Smell's not a perfect indicator. Some apples are just not very aromatic. Some will smell very strongly way before they're ripe. But it's another thing to check. See, here's one of these light-proof bags here. Have to take them all off, and then they're exposed to the birds and to sunburn, right? Because now it's been completely covered its whole life, and now it's going to get the hard sun on it. I don't need to have to put the bag on and then go take it off at a certain time. That's crazy. Okay, this one is chestnut crab with maypole 15.1. It looks very promising, to tell you the truth. Oh, here's one that's fallen off. Oh no, I broke that off, and these aren't ready yet. Anyway, earlier I came out here to check on some and broke them off. Apparently they break off pretty easy, and these look a little closer to ripe. This one's pretty exciting. I'm excited about that because it's going to grow like this. See how this is a dwarf? I can show you an example up here of maypole, which is one of the parents, and that's where it gets this trait right here. This is sugarwood right here, the original tree, and you can see it's loaded up with these little apples to the point where it just fell over. I need to stake it up. But yeah, this is how it bears. And I would suspect for cider that you wouldn't really want to thin this unless it gets to the point where it's going to break branches. You know, these apples don't get much bigger than this. So it's a long way from ready. It's a much later apple. This is maypole right here, and that's how it grows. You know, this could continue to get a little bit taller and spread out a little bit, but not much. I mean, it's probably only 3 feet in diameter, totally unpruned, really. That's just how they grow, so it's kind of cool. Okay, I almost forgot about this one. This is a very promising seedling. From what I've tasted so far, it's definitely a cherry cox offspring. And I think I'm going to go ahead and pick. That really didn't want to come off. I was hoping there'd be something that's close enough to ripe that we could just go ahead and taste it early. Let's just take this one. Get these in the fridge, chilled up, and then we'll taste them in the next day or two. All right, this morning we have 4 new seedling apples, new this year. I have actually tasted all of these, but only partially ripe specimens or early specimens, and I would say that it's likely that these 4 are not at their best yet, and there's more on the tree coming on, so we'll see how this goes. I think we'll at least get an idea of their basic character. In the lot there are 2 Williams Pride-Vixen crosses. One is 15.5 and this one's 15.10. Those are just numbers I use to keep track of which apple's which. This is a maypole chestnut cross, number 15.1. And this is a cherry cox seedling. I know that just because of the look and the flavor, but there's no actual tag on it. But it should be cherry cox and grenadine. I just don't know which direction, if it's cherry cox is the seed parent or the pollen parent. I think the Williams Pride-Vixen are going to be the milder flavored of these, so we'll start with those. Number 15.5 has this distinct, very neat actual conical shape. Well, that's interesting. You know what this reminds me of is Bite Me. To describe the parentage of this, Everyone hears me talk about Vixen all the time. This is an apple bred by Albert Eder in Northern California in the mid last century or early part of the last century, I think. But it has this flavor. I used to just call it the Vixen thing because I couldn't figure out what it was. And then I started calling it malt, which I think is a pretty, sometimes a pretty good close descriptor. But I think what it really is it's umami. It's umami is like the, you know, the other flavor. Think about the flavor of malt. It's sweet, but it's not fruity at all. It's not a bright flavor. It's a deep, rich flavor, right? Like I think malt probably has umami, and that's what makes it really unique. It's got this like depth and this rounded richness and fullness to the flavor versus being like a bunch of high notes, right? If you think of something that's really fruity, like fruit punch or something, it's all these like aromatic high notes, but this is different. So it has that. And the reason it has it is because of Vixen, and Vixen is the closest thing to a large Vixen. So, you know, Vixen's this little tiny apple, but it has a super concentrated flavor and a whole lot of that character I'm trying to describe. And Vixen is like a blown up version. It actually very much looks like this, and it has less of that, but it's still, you know, it's still pretty obvious, and it's really pronounced. And Bite Me also has that. So this reminds me of an earlier in the season Bite Me apple. So I really like it. It is a lot like an earlier Bite Me. The shape is different. I would say it's a little more dense. It's not really, I don't know if I'd say it's crunchy. Like it's actually pretty firm and it cleaves off, and there's some crunch, you know, but it's not a crisp apple, but it may be a partially crunchy apple. And I think it's possibly a little crunchier than Bite Me, but this is a pretty early specimen, so I don't know. I don't know how perfect this specimen is. Like Bite Me, the flavors are mild, but there's enough of that umami, malt, whatever thing that it's really compelling to eat. Anyone who's watched me taste apples before knows how I talk about me observing myself, like trying to like distance myself a little bit and just watch my like visceral reaction to the apple. And in this case, it's like I want to sit there, I just keep chewing at it, trying to get all the flavor out, right? Some apples I'm like, okay, I'm over it, I just spit it out. You can describe an apple, you can say, you know, this apple has this flavor, which I think I like, or whatever, but in the end, if I'm not getting after it, right? If I don't take a bite and I'm not like, whatever my animal instincts kick in, and I'm just like going after it, trying to get all the flavor out of it, then who cares, right? That's like the acid test. The real acid test is compulsion. Like, am I compelled to really eat this apple? And I am. I want to finish this apple. Now, with both of these Williams Pride-Vixen crosses, Williams Pride is very scab resistant. So one of the big downfalls of Bite Me is scab. So if this turns out to be scab resistant, that would be great. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, this year is not a bad scab year, so I really can't tell anything about scab. So going forward with this apple, there are more on the tree. It actually bore quite a few apples. Like the other Williams Pride-Vixen crosses, or many of them, it seems to be precocious. It bore early in life at 6 years, which is early for my trees. You know, there's all kinds of other cultural traits to keep an eye on, but I'll be tasting more of these this year and trying to let some of them ripen more on the tree to get an idea of if, like Bite Me, they improve a lot with hanging, right? So with Bite Me, you really have to hang it long enough for it to start to get that good flavor. And this has it for sure, and it doesn't really look like it's an ideal specimen, so I think this may improve. So that's a pretty good start. Okay, so this one is also a Williams Pride-Vixen, and you can see it's much different shape. It's a pretty good size. A lot of the apples on the tree are pretty good size, even though they're under pretty rough conditions on a very small tree, and bore a lot of fruit on top of it. So this could be a good sized apple. It's pretty lumpy looking, very little odor. I have no idea if this is really ready or not. Hard. It's quite hard. It kind of looks like there's something wrong with this side of it where I bit it. This is definitely a little underripe. You know, with all these, we're riding the front edge of ripeness for sure. I can already taste a little bit of that same malty umami Vixen thing, but it's not as strong. It's definitely more fruity. There's more like aromatic high notes in here. The flesh is very fine textured. It cleaves off. It's almost hard. It's not nearly as hard as the part I bit first, which there's something wrong with this side of the apple. So this is more how it's going to be, but it crunches up well, and it's full of juice. There's a lot of juice in there. So yeah, it seems really promising. I have a feeling the richness and depth of the flavor is going to improve, probably even the aromatic stuff too, as we get some specimens that are more ripe. This was just the ripest one I could find on the tree. So yeah, I mean, this is actually pretty promising, and I think both of these are going to beat out Twang, which was the first of these Williams Pride-Vixen seedlings I tasted. The other one we tasted in the last video, there were 4 of them we got to taste this year, was also large like this, and also probably better than Twang. So all 3 of these are probably going to beat out Twang. I think all of them are going to just end up being good apples. You know, it's just a matter of whether I mean, how many just good apples do we want, right? It's like, I want things to distinguish themselves in some way, even if that's just a good apple with good disease resistance, for instance, is, you know, might be worth propagating. So we'll see on this one. Keep an eye on it. It's certainly promising. So now we have this little maypole chestnut crab cross. And I did taste one of these, and it was very promising, but it was pretty messed up. Like it had broken off the tree and was just barely hanging on the tree, and so it ripened early. This one does not look ripe, but hopefully we'll get an idea of its character. Wow. 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 This blue jay hanging out there. He's trying to get my grapes. He thinks they're his grapes. Yeah. Wow. So one of my favorite flavors to run into in apples is basically this sort of artificial fruit hard candy flavors, like these little hard candies that come in different. Yo, mama. You're in my hood now. Little territorial rivalry there. Yeah, so one of the favorite flavors I love to run into in apples is these kind of artificial fruit candy type of flavors, right? Hard candies that come in different flavors like watermelon and cherry and lime and apple and stuff like that. So this one is just powerfully like that. It's almost like someone soaked it in, you know, a drop of artificial watermelon flavor or something like that. A very intense, strong flavor, and it keeps going. Like you keep chewing it and it's still there. It's not like, whoa, there's that flavor, and then it's like, oh yeah, it's still there, it's still there. It's like, whoa, like it just, yeah, it's it's pretty intense. So we have basically a genetic dwarf that's going to grow as a columnar that has like super intense fruit flavor. Like no one could bite into this apple and not go, whoa, like what's up with that? So texture-wise, it's nothing to write home about. It's a little bit grainy, like it's got like a coarse, juicy texture. I'll have to keep an eye on that and see how that does. I'm honestly surprised that this is this good and this flavorful the way it looked. It just didn't look completely ripe to me. But you know, that's a really difficult thing to judge, is just to know when to eat them. There's always a lot of questions to be answered going forward. You know, like what is it going to be like disease-wise, cultural-wise? Is it going to bear regularly on the big side for a columnar or on the small side for a columnar? You know, what's the disease resistance going to be? So there's a real juxtaposition here between these two apples. This one has very little in the way of like high notes and fruitiness and this kind of like refreshing thing that this has. This is all that. This is just that. That's all there is. It's just all fruity high note type of stuff, and then there's no base. Like this is all base. Like it has this like deep, rich, rounded flavor. Okay, this one really looks pretty underripe. I've already tasted this, so I know that it's a cherry cox offspring because, again, it wasn't labeled. It also has the look, like it has these stripes on it that are large. They're like wide stripes, like someone took a watercolor paints and just like put these broad brush strokes across it. That's like a Cox's Orange Pippin thing. You know, cherry cox is basically a Cox's Orange Pippin. This is definitely a little starchy, underripe, it's still really tart. The flavor is definitely not developed yet, so this is quite a bit early. It's kind of looking like this might ripen with cherry cox, so it would have to compete with it in some way to kind of replace it. But there is, the cherry flavor is there. So is there's like an anise flavor, which is real common in Cox's Orange Pippin and the Cox's Orange Pippin offspring. Not my favorite flavor, anise in an apple. I actually like it a lot if it's really, really subtle. Like it has to be contributing to the whole flavor profile. If it's just an anise flavored apple, one of the worst apples I've tasted this year is a Blenheim orange. I don't know, it's an English apple that has a very strong anise flavor, and it was like, couldn't eat it. So this has a bit of that. The specimens I've tasted already of this, like early ripening things that were damaged by sunburn or birds or something, had more of the cherry flavor, more promising, more better, more ripe than this. It's definitely promising. It's a good sized apple. It's got a nice texture. It's very juicy. The flavor so far, what there is of it, is really good. I'm wondering if it's ever going to get as strong as the cherry cox cherry flavor, which when at its best, it's kind of like an artificial cherry cough drop type of a flavor. But what's encouraging is we did get that cherry flavor, at least to some extent, passed down. Now that's especially interesting because cherry cox is not a variety that was grown from a seed. It was a variety that was taken off of another tree as a mutant. So Cox's Orange Pippin is one of the most famous apples in the world in terms of, like, you know, gourmet apples. Like, it's probably the apple that has been called the best apple, tasting apple in the world the most. You know, I don't think that's really necessarily true. It's obviously a matter of taste, and there's a lot of apples in the world. But you can see it has like a very high reputation. So cherry cox is a sport of Cox's Orange Pippin, and that just means that one day a bud on Cox's Orange Pippin decided to grow a little different. It looks a little different, it actually performs a little different, but mostly it tastes different. It just has this, you know, cherry flavor that Cox's Orange Pippin, it distinguished itself from that. So then someone takes a cutting from that one, you know, stick that grew out and grew these different apples, and that's how we got cherry cox. So what's interesting is that genetically, I think, you know, cherry cox and Cox's Orange Pippin are the same, but something got switched on in cherry cox to have it grow differently and have this other flavor. So in other words, you know, there's hard genetics and malleable genetics. So it's like genetics and epigenetics, I guess. I'm not really super savvy about this, but everyone's talking about epigenetics right now, right? So I think what this might be is that, like, that cherry flavored gene was sitting in Cox's Orange Pippin, and then for some reason it got turned on in this mutant. But that trait was passed, and that's what they tell us now about epigenetics too. It's like the things that happen to you, the way you eat, the environment you live in, the things you think, the things you feel, the things you go through, leave a record on your genetics because they throw switches. They turn things on, turn things off, and then that can actually be passed generation to generation. So it's just encouraging because I wondered about this, like, are we going to actually get that cherry trait passed down? And apparently we are, so that's very encouraging. This could also be, you know, used as a breeder because there is a hint of red flesh in it because, again, the other parent should be grenadine. So it's not going to be a red-fleshed apple. Like, at its very best, at its very ripest, I really doubt we're going to see anything significant regarding that. But if we use it in further breeding, we may be able to get, you know, red-fleshed in apples in coming generations by crossing it with other red-fleshed apples, and hopefully retain, you know, the possibility of getting that cherry flavor into those apples as well. So that is pretty exciting. It's very exciting. It's just we have it a little bit early here, so you know, it's just a matter of we kind of have to head it with cherry cocks to see what happens. That's actually 4 pretty promising apples. Again, just lots of questions to be answered going down the line. I doubt I'll make any of these available this year, but we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I really have no idea. I have no idea what the future of this whole project is right now. I'm probably not going to grow any more seedlings just because I'm going to have to move, and I have no place to move. I have no money to buy land, and the only place I have to work with is like a postage stamp of land in town, which is not really even good apple territory. It's like super hot down there. I can grow citrus, which is exciting. Maybe cold hardy avocado, which would be really exciting, but it's very, very small. That may affect my decision whether to send this stuff out early or late. So I haven't really thought about it yet. Ideally, I would like to fruit them and eat them for another year, but I don't even know how long I'm going to be here or anything. I don't know anything right now. My life's in complete like existential upheaval. I have no idea. I might just take off and take like a 1 or 2 year sabbatical. I have no idea. So, but at least I got this far, and those genetics exist. They exist. So certainly, at least I will get these grafted out in town and somewhere out here on like a foundation tree where I can let them do their thing and come back and check them later. But you know, part of this whole process for me, again, I talked about in some other video where, you know, the normal thing you would do with these apples is test them for years, and you would get like plots of land in different places, you know, send them to people, they sign some kind of contract that they're not going to propagate it or give it away, and you know, you grow these trial plots in different places to observe all these things like growth characteristics, like what do the farmers think of them, like are they running into any problems, what's the disease resistance, and all that stuff. And for me and for us, like, you guys kind of have to be those beta testers that take it to the next, you know, thing and find out what happens, because I'm not interested in trying to do that on my own or orchestrate that or anything. So I'd rather just get the stuff out there and let you guys kind of assess it and move it forward, and hopefully use some of this stuff in further breeding. There are other new apples coming on this year, so we'll get to hopefully taste a few more this fall and winter, and yeah, see you later.